So,
Sorry.
okay, we can jump right in. All right, let's start with the minutes of August 10th. And they're a little longer than normal, so let's just start page by page. Anything on page 1? Karen, you're on mute.
Better?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Page 1, second paragraph, where I refer to the flooding at Mitchell Road. The point I was trying to make was not really regarding flooding, but it just in general that we're spending a lot of time on issues that are outside our jurisdiction and we don't have authority. So just trying to make a point that those issues should be directed to the appropriate departments. So it wasn't specific to flooding issues.
Got it. I'll make it more general.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, anything else on page 1?
Yeah, the next paragraph, second line, where we're talking about the Stow acres and potential special town meeting. I would just refer to it, necessary to advance the Stow acres. It says housing project. I would say housing / open space, because that has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
All right. Page 2.
Just the first line, Malcolm, just uppercase, White Pond Road.
Catch. These ones are going to have some typographical errors.
Pardon?
These ones are going to have some typographical errors, I think. kind of rush these ones out.
Hey, was that grant for track road, was it 75 or 750?
750.
750.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not a typo.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Page 2 or 3.
I heard necessarily in the title at the bottom, reordering stuff. Mistake.
What's that?
Just unnecessary word in the section header at the bottom of page 3.
Oh. Oh.
All right.
We're still on page 3.
Go ahead. We're going to go on to 4.
Okay, I'm on page 4, last paragraph. It just looks like there's an extra word in there, third line down. Just take out basement. So followed.
Yeah, third line.
Cottage dwelling units would require basements. Right?
I think that is supposed to be in there. The idea being that was their issue, that they might have to develop basements with, yeah, the short heights to keep it out of the calculation of gross floor area. So I think it is specifically basements.
So, but it's saying basements in cottage style dwellings would require basements.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So also,
Why don't you just say would require basement ceiling heights?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
also on page 4, the second full paragraph, starting with Karen Keller, the 1, 2, 3, 4th line at the end, it says and verified that the A complete.
Yep.
I think the A is extra.
All
On
right.
page 5, you're referring to Bruce Fletcher, and it should be Bruce Wheeler.
Yeah, I don't think.
I'm sorry, I mixed up my Bruces. Can
There's
happen.
a couple instances of that.
Does
There are
Malcolm even know
multiple-
Bruce Fletcher?
There are multiple instances of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You started out with Wheeler, and then somehow it changed to Fletcher.
Yep, so it did.
Yeah, and also on page 5, the 6th paragraph, it says Brush Wheeler, Bruch.
Oh,
Go.
okay, I'm back on the
Um,
first paragraph, on this page. Karen Kelleher said that the overall vision of structures was that 1,800 square feet required in the bylaw would result in smaller building footprints. I think what I was trying to get at is my concern was more about the overall bulk of the bulk and size of the structures rather than basements.
Right. Okay. It's kind of a clunky sentence anyhow, once I heard it out loud.
The
And
second-
You
go ahead,
go.
Meg.
Well, I was gonna say kind of along that same line. I know I kind of garbled it, but just in the next paragraph, I mean, I was kind of saying something, we were both kind of talking about that calculation. And I'm not sure that that's what I said when it says Moira Costello blah, blah, to 1,400 square feet. I think I said something like that, but I was just, I think that we could clean that up or get that sentence out, because that's not what I intended, if that's what I did say.
Okay.
It's kind of along the same line as what Karen was just saying about gross floor area. And if you could just figure out how to say that for both Karen's paragraph and my paragraph, that would be great.
Okay.
The second paragraph under the sign section. I'm pretty sure I didn't say the word frivolous. It's the third line down. I don't know. I understand. I don't have a word to replace it with. Maybe it may not have been fruitful given the straightforwardness. How about that?
Yeah,
I just, the word frivolous kind of struck me odd.
Yeah,
And then the next sentence where the path forward is to amend the sign bylaw. Can you just get rid of rather than worry about enforcement? Because it comes across as if I don't want to bother
don't
worrying
care.
about
Yeah.
enforcement, and that's
Yeah.
definitely not the point.
Yeah,
so just take those words, that end of the sentence
Sure.
off.
Really, I'm saying we need to amend the bylaw in order to figure out how to allow businesses.
Why don't you just say we need to, the next step would be.
Yeah.
It would be, I think it'd be very long-winded for me to say exactly what that conversation was about,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Any other comments on any page?
I move that we approve minutes of the August 10th meeting as amended.
second,
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. So Nancy,
hi,
Meg,
Aye.
John,
aye.
Karen,
Aye.
and I. All right. Any comments on correspondence?
The only comment I had was on the correspondence from Lee Hildebrandt. And it seems to me that she's got, is a little confused about the difference between the right of way and the paved way portion of the right of way. Because she keeps saying we moved her property line, but it was, I think she's just confused on thinking that the paved roadway is the width of the right of way.
Do you think that that's not addressed in Denise's memo?
She might have addressed it. I'm
Kind of
not,
indirectly.
maybe indirectly, but I'm not sure if the point was. I don't know, I don't remember.
I mean, I think she was just calling out that we had a temporary easement to do work, but
Right.
I think Karen's point is a valid one, which is her property line did not move.
Right. And
So she was utilizing the
Yeah.
right of way. I think, as far as I can tell from prior communication to citizens from the highway department, I thought they used language like anything you do in the right of way is at your own risk.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that it would hurt us to, I mean, I know another instance where this is happening, is that I don't think it would hurt for us to just put a little notice in the newspaper explaining that, you know, where your property line is, and then in between your property line and the public street is a buffer area that really does belong to the town. And if you fix that up, but it's just, that does not really belong to you, but you grant the town
Yeah.
access, you know, and I don't think it would hurt to explain that to people.
I almost think if we're going to create something, then let's create a one pager that we can hand out anytime it comes up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Approximately every winter, an announcement goes out that people's mailboxes are vulnerable because they're in the right of way. So it's actually kind of a regular occurrence. People are notified in one public way or another, perhaps non-obvious.
It's almost like, hey, did you know that in front of every property, there's a right of way where your
Yeah.
property line
Yeah.
ends and the town-owned land begins?
Maybe a list of FAQs on our website.
And if you
Yeah.
choose to do something in that area, nobody's
That
going
you're on
to
risk. Yeah.
necessarily stop you unless it impedes the town from doing something they need.
Right.
to.
Yeah.
And there must be regulations about planting trees and stuff in those areas too, if it gets in the way of plowing, and people might not know that.
Mhm.
And I guess, maybe we can I would certainly want the highway department to bless the language, whatever it is that we would be communicating out to people.
And
Because
actually,
if they need to do something in there, they're going to hear from the highway department. They're not going to hear
Yeah.
from us.
yeah,
Right.
actually, it should come from the highway department. Yeah. Laurie, it looks like Lynn has her hand up.
Oh. Lynn, did you want to comment on something?
Hi, it's my wife's computer again. It's John. I don't know how to change it, and every time I try to, I think I mess stuff up for her. So,
That's okay.
yeah, I just wanted to comment on the correspondence. I don't know if we're at that point, or I need to wait for the public input, or.
We typically would wait for public input, but if
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I think I just
before we
finally
go on-
figured out the agenda portion of it. So.
yeah, before we go on to that, let me just make sure we're done with this specific piece of correspondence we were responding or discussing about. Does anybody have anything else to add regarding
Just
Karen?
going back to the FAQ or whatever, the document we're talking about, it probably should come from the highway department.
Mhm.
Thinking back on my comment before, that it's really their jurisdiction.
So, Jesse, I wonder if you can reach out and just get whatever statement or language, and maybe we can then take that and utilize that to create some FAQs.
Yeah, I think that will work. I can talk with Steve, and I think the right time for it was probably ahead of any discussions advancing around town center and what's going to be happening.
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
So yeah, we'll think on that as well. So I'll follow up.
Okay.
thanks.
So John, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, just in regards to what I'd sent to you guys on August 5th. It keeps kind of going back to the whole Wedgwood situation. Can you guys hear me okay, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. The mic thing's not showing anything. So, it's, what Malcolm had seen, when he was there on the 9th, was that the water was coming from Wedgwood. That's correct, right? You guys have seen the video at this point, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I don't know if someone from the planning board kind of needs to clarify that with Steve, because Steve's note and letter had kind of referred to it as emanating from my property and flooding into the road. And I know multiple times, I've heard in meetings from Rich, regarding the flooding from 137, that there's water from my property, that's flooding into the road. And it's not sourced at my property. And again, it's not flowing through my property with my permission. There's no easement that I've granted, nor my wife, nor any previous owner for drainage from Wedgwood, going back to 1958 or 59 when the house was built, but I mean, back then it was trees. So is there any way that you guys can clarify that with Steve?
Yeah, this is Jesse. I'm sure, I feel that he is aware of that, but that's a discussion. I think what Steve is trying to say in his letter is that, it's coming from, it's not coming from another public way. It's not something that's pooling along the road and then becoming a problem. So I will try to clarify that with him, but I have a feeling that he does understand
Yeah.
that nuance nonetheless. But
He was probably just trying to make a point that it's coming off of private property, wherever it is. I don't think he was speaking to the source.
Okay.
Probably coming off Wedgwood through your property.
Yeah, it's just coming from a business that's got, somewhere along the line, a town permit to operate, and I'm assuming like a state permit to operate, in terms of the pesticides and fertilizers, et cetera, so, and Rich keeps referring to the 9th, as, kind of his line in the sand or whatever the analogy would be, for drainage, through the stone wall, which I clarified, with the call with Kathy and Jesse last week, that it's only done that about 3 or 4 times since we've owned the house. Again, it's due to the runoff and the flooding that we get from Wedgwood. So I just didn't know if it needed to be clarified with Steve, or if I could get something in writing from you guys that you're acknowledging that it's not sourced at my property. I just don't want to be held liable if he's not going to do anything this winter if it ices in the road again near my property or in front of my driveway with the school bus and the kids, because they'll be back on the bus this year.
Can I just throw something in? I talked to some former highway guys, and they think there are some records in highway about that part of the road that shows there's been icing there for at least 2 decades that they've dealt with. I don't know if those records would mean anything, because that would be sort of before Wedgwood really got going too. I saw Scott the other day, and he recalled the situation going way back. I don't know.
So Laurie, if I recall, we talked about this issue a lot, and I think it was agreed that once we get the permit done with the application that's open, then we would have to take a look at the overall issue, because it hasn't been determined what, if anything, Wedgwood did.
Correct.
Okay.
So I know you're frustrated and it takes a long time, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've
it's
had
the
the flooding for
process.
Yeah.
7 years
Yeah.
now through my property.
yeah,
And the icing's been an issue for the past 5 years in front of the driveway and where it breaches into the road. I've owned the property for 12 years. The first 5 years, we never had the sump pump go off. We didn't have any flooding in the basement. We didn't have any flooding, through my property. We used to be able to pick blueberries in that section of the woods. I used to be able to get to my shed easily. And, now we're not. I know that they've done things to re-engineer it because of the flooding from Wedgwood on Wedgwood Road. They re-engineered and put in a series of traps down toward the end of it, that was done the last 4 or 5 years, I think. So.
And I guess what I would say, John, is we've heard your statements loud and clear. We understand that you are indicating you believe the source is Wedgwood. And as Karen said, we plan to take up that discussion. And with that, I would say, as far as Greg statements go, I mean, the applicant can say whatever they want. Don't take that. If we're sitting here sort of just taking in and gathering whatever their statements are, you shouldn't interpret that as
agreement or
that we're walking
disagreement.
away
Yeah,
as
yeah,
factual. So just wanted to indicate that so you don't feel that you need to, every time he makes a statement, repeat that.
No, I understand. I just, I just want it, firmly on record, and I just don't want it to be shifted toward me, I don't know if it's an erosion control plan or what Wedgewood needs, I mean, I've been told by the town building department that they can't do anything unless it's 10 foot within my property line, but then the town building department representative doesn't want to take a walk up and back there. So, I mean, I'm out of options, and you guys know that the building department, is the one who had referred me to you guys, so I'm sorry I keep coming back to you, but it's, no one else in town responds,
Understood.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time.
All right, other comments on correspondence? Jesse, I don't know if you were going to give us any more update on the Spring Hill situation, but curious if you had seen any action or gotten any response to your response to them.
I have not. It's been on my list this week. I was gonna take a ride up there, see how things looked. I've been following up since on the erosion control reports, and it still looks like the same areas are a concern. So I'm gonna go back. We're gonna do that again. I'll go back, review it again, send out something else, and then we also are in the process of doing a lot of other stuff with transferring the title and a lot of that. So we're at a good point that if there is some issues that we can really require them to be fixed. There are some kind of annoying issues in terms of a breach where there's some sediment in the easement area. We know that the basin eventually is going to need to be cleaned out. There's some rotted hay bales. None of that is like Regency or Jillian's Lane style emergency right now. I just want to obviously get it resolved. And I sent that piece of correspondence to try to indicate to Ducharme and Roy, or Dillis and Roy, that not only should they, that they should be acting on and recommending action on issues that they see in the field, not just simply describing that they saw them. These are SWPPP inspections. There's a expectation that if something is identified, you take care of it. So I'll certainly be out there again, and I'll make that loud and clear the next time I talk to them.
Okay. The other correspondence you had was for the Lions Club event. Can we get the attachment of what their plan was? I only saw your response.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we can do that. Yep.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, I
It's
thought
in my
there were
hard copy
pictures
packet.
and a map of, the well and the water around it and where the trucks would be, where the parking would be. That was all in there.
Oh, sorry, separate link.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, are they going to the selectmen for a permit for this? Like a entertainment permit or event permit? I'm just curious.
I think that was the expectation, although I think I saw something that they were going to delay it for a little bit.
Yeah, so I assumed that they were going to the selectmen because you were responding to something from Joyce from the selectmen's office.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just
Right.
not
Oh,
sure.
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
just not sure exactly what it was, but I think it was some sort of
Yeah.
entertainment style license. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Just curious. I think it's a good plan. I hope they get to do it.
Okay. Any other comments on correspondence?
Actually, I'd just add to that one. If anyone has any idea what that permit the select board is asking from, I'd love to hear it, because I've watched this whole process develop, and it seems like this is very ad hoc on the select board is basically making this process up as they go along and kind of inventing a permit that there is no regulation for. So I'd be very curious to know about that.
Yeah, I think they're referring to them as an entertainment permit.
Or
I'm
an
not
event
sure.
permit,
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe we can check with Denise when she gets back.
Okay. Any other comments on correspondence? All right. Any public input on things that are not already on the agenda?
Not sure how to raise my hand.
Go ahead. Yeah, you can raise it physically since we can see you.
I was just curious about Nance, whether they've actually had somebody appeal that or not.
No, they have not.
So the 20 days has already gone by.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
All right. Any planning board member updates? Okay.
I just wanted to say that, I got appointed to the, we're gonna start up on the creation of the, Gleasondale Historic District again. We've done all the research, all the legwork, and, so it's just really the formality in between us and the certification. So we're gonna, so we got appointed, I think there's 5 of us maybe on a board that's gonna work with the state and just get that done. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Really good.
So I wanted to make some comments about that. There was a non-flattering article about the CPC in the local newspaper last week. And being that I'm the planning board's representative there, I wanted to say that I think I was very surprised how misinformed the select board is about the workings of the CPC and some of their comments. All of my work there, I have not seen ever that the CPC thinks that the money that we manage is our money. Just like any of the other boards, we don't spend a penny. It's town meeting that spends the money. And so to make comments like they think that the CPC owns that money is really misinformation as far as I'm concerned.
Do you
And
know what prompted that? And I'm sorry, I'm behind on the paper reading, so.
I wasn't at the meeting, but I think it's a misinterpretation of some things. So, I mean, the CPC is responsible for the money that's in that account, right? And we try to, be purposeful on what we recommend to town meeting to spend it on. But in reality, we almost never vote down any proposal. If somebody, another board or a private citizen comes to us with a proposal, we vet it to make sure that it's a good proposal, but we don't make any judgment on it as to whether or not it's really something the town wants, because it's not our call, right? It's really town meeting's call, right? So we make sure it's a good proposal. We make sure it fits in with the requirements, because we can only spend CPC money on certain things. So to think about, yeah, there's coordination that can happen with the capital planning committee, but CPC has nothing to do with buying police cruisers or those kinds of things. It's not in our bailiwick, right? So, it's a different kind of money. And, we try to encourage people to make good affordable housing proposals, good land conservation proposals, good historic proposals, and bring them to town meeting. So I'm very disappointed that there was this really misinformation about how the CPC works and what we do.
So Laurie, I think it all began with a comment that one of the members of the select board made about he heard a statement that was made at the CPC meeting, but I'm sure that statement was taken completely out of context.
Yeah.
So, John, has anyone from CPC followed up with the select board at all?
Not that I know of. That's probably a good idea, that we should meet with them again and make sure that they understand how we approach things. And
Also, a letter to the editor wouldn't hurt.
yeah, I thought about that, but I wanted to cool off a bit before I did that. And maybe it shouldn't come from me. Maybe it should come from the CPC, would be probably better.
You could draft something they all agree to and
Yeah,
they
that's
all
an
put their
idea.
names on.
But I want to make sure this board knows that, we are trying to be good stewards of that fund.
Well, I certainly never had that impression, John, so
No,
I'm sorry to hear
neither
that
have I.
those statements were made.
Plus, the CPC partners with so many projects, as a multiple partner, you're not working alone.
Yeah.
No.
No, but I think you make a good statement of the CPC is there to ensure that the proposals have good information, solid information,
Mhm.
and fit within the guidelines of what the money should be spent for. And it's really not necessarily,
We didn't make a
if
decision.
they approve or deny something, it's really based on those two aspects. Looking for either better or more information, or the fact that it may not fall under the guidelines of what the money should be spent for. So I think that should be known as well.
Mhm.
And really, it's the town that decides whether or not we do those
Don't
things.
spend any money, that's right.
All right. Any other planning board member updates? All right, Desi. Assuming you have power for the next 5 minutes or so.
Talk fast.
I'm doing okay. This dinosaur is holding up.
Talk fast.
All right, so let's start with update on Nan's Market. We did receive a plan that was part of the plan modification required by the decision. It came in a little too late, though, to put on, certainly on the agenda and even into the correspondence. So we'll have it for review next week. And then as a response, I contacted the owner of Nan's, and I highlighted the decision, including all of the plan modifications that were required, to make sure that they recognized even the smaller things and weren't kind of, if you're not familiar with the decision, it's easy just to see black on white. So I just wanted to make sure that they were aware of all the different plan modifications before they can get going. And like I reported last week, they also understand, like, hey, the vision that they had put forward is obviously, this is not going to be the year for it, but they do want to get some things squared away to do something. And then over the winter, we'll have that kind of period of review, and we can determine whether or not they're going to seek some modifications at that time. So,
Just as a side comment, I went there to pick up lunch today for takeout. I pre-ordered. I was in the parking lot for maybe 5 minutes tops. There was nowhere to park. People were illegally parking all over because there literally was nowhere to park. So that,
yep.
and it's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Granted,
No,
it was
There was
10.
no event, there was no event going on? or
No,
anything?
And there are no seats.
no.
There's 40, 36 or whatever it was that we.
It was 10 past 12. So I didn't mean, I actually was purposely trying to get there before noon because I knew it would be busy, but yeah, there was no event. It was a little crazy.
I mean, we have received some complaints about illegal parking. Those have been forwarded to building inspector, and I know he has a meeting with the property owner.
And I will admit, I sat in my car waiting for someone to leave. And when the person pulled out, I pulled in and I realized I was pulling into the handicap parking spot. Like, I probably was out of my car for a total of 1 minute, but it was insanity.
Appropriate, yeah.
So I thought he was gonna make arrangements for employees to park off.
That was only on
Yeah.
weekends.
Oh,
Oh,
So I don't know, but it was a little crazy. So that's something we should just keep an eye on, I think.
Okay. And so just.
Mark,
moving
did you
along.
want to comment on that? Sorry, Jesse.
Yeah, I was just curious, when do they have to be in compliance to all the, I know they just got it and they need to, have some time to, put the fence up and get into compliance with all the rules of the planning board special permit. When does that actually need to be completed by? They must have some kind of a deadline, correct? Before,
Yeah.
before enforcement takes place.
They have like this, there's the standard 2-year expiration, but that's not really relevant here. It's basically about the way that it's governed is prior to any of the outdoor seating and some of the proposals, prior to any of that taking place, they have to follow several plan modifications that are in the decision. So that's what they're working on now. That's why they gave me the plan and why I responded to them with the other things that were still necessary.
Is there a chance of getting a copy of that, Jesse?
Of the
The,
decision?
Of, not the decision itself, but the one that you marked up to show what changes were there.
Yeah, yep. I mean, yes, we can do that. It'll also be in the packet for next week, but I can do that.
All right, if it's gonna be.
I can
next
get it
week,
for you this week, though. That's
Okay, I
fine.
appreciate it. Thank you.
So I have a question, just kind of follow up to that is, so we knew before this that there was a traffic issue. And we just got evidence today from Laurie that there's a traffic, issue. I mean, when I drive by, there are traffic issues. Like, how long are we going to put up with this? Or how long are we going to accept that this is not okay? And this is not part of the decision. This needs to be enforced. I think Mark was asking, and maybe I'm wrong, but when is this going to be just enforced? Right.
Well, I'm not sure there is any enforcement at this point. I mean, they have a certain number of parking spaces. They're allowed to use them. My concern is more that the special permit allows them to have, seating that they currently don't have, which is going to put additional pressure on that parking lot. And, unless I guess people are parking in illegal spots or blocking the road, then I assume the police would get involved.
I mean, I can certainly put it on a follow-up agenda if we want to have a discussion about all that. That's not a problem.
Certainly let's get their plan modification next
Yep.
week, but maybe we can spend some time talking about
Okay.
that as well.
Okay. And
Just
then
to clarify, I don't know, Jesse, if you emphasize this, like the building department, the zoning inspecting officer is in receipt of complaints about things like that, the illegal parking that he's been seeing. So the body with enforcement authority, does have those.
And Jesse, you said he's gonna meet with the property owner or the business owner.
Yeah, they've just been
Yeah.
copying me on their emails back and forth, so I can tell that the building inspector's been following up, and that's the way it's supposed to work right now.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as Hallocks Point goes tonight, I just received some comments back from John Witten today. Very basic comments, but I haven't really had a chance to fully digest and get the decision up to snuff. So I was thinking of
Waiting
pushing
till
it
next
to
week.
next week. Yeah, but can you remind me who's out next week? 8/24, was there someone out? No? Good. Okay.
No,
Perfect.
I'm not out until September.
Okay, so then that's what I'm gonna try to do. So I just want to make sure that I've correctly understood where John is coming from rather than kind of rushing it tonight.
Okay.
Jesse, while you're looking at it, it's drafted where you have 6 people participating, so I don't think Mark should be on there unless somebody else was missing. There should be only 5.
Exactly. I'll take a look and see what happened there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Okay.
Sorry, can I ask a question about the A&Rs on Hallocks Point? Did they get incorporated into the ANRs, the whole affordable housing count for those parcels, so that they get queued up? Is that a standard thing for ANRs?
Yeah, that note is standard. They
Got
did not say this lot constitutes the first division and this constitutes the second, but it's just a boilerplate. Upon the 6th division, such and such takes effect. So that's
Got
important.
it. Thank you.
Okay, so, and then I wanted to just give a quick update based from our last meeting. I did speak with Arnie Epstein and Mike Duclos regarding the energy efficiency discussion around Habitat, and they are going to make plans to talk with Bruce Wheeler and George from Stamps
Good.
and McNary.
Good.
So I think that will be a good discussion. We met today and kind of thought about the kinds of things that we want to talk about. They also suggested, which I think is a good suggestion, which is getting in touch with EOEEA, which is Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs at the state, and get the secretary there, if we can get her attention, which I'm working on now, to really be a little more direct in what these requirements are going to look like as part of this whole roadmap to 2050. She's put out a few different presentations to different groups, and Arnie and Mike's argument was that, like, we need that kind of public engagement now, especially with the amount of units in the pipeline. So I'm going to reach out to Kate Hogan's office tomorrow, kind of talk about what that looks like, see what their thoughts are. Would it be possible to get something potentially from EOEA? If I have to, I can touch base with Magic as well and try to put that pressure on from the 13 towns as part of our climate coalition that we just started. So there's a few different pressure points here, but I do tend to agree that this would be, this whole, it's not just about Habitat. It's about everything that's going to happen between now and whenever that goes into effect, all those buyers that are buying into the transition period. So anyway, working on that. I hope to give another update soon. We'll probably get that meeting between the Energy Committee folks and Habitat will probably be sometime in September. And then I'm just going to go through a few quick updates here. I'm working on the Town Center RFP, so we'll have that for review shortly. I know the Complete Streets Committee wants to look at it as well. This is for the conceptual plans that were funded at town meeting for traffic updates and Complete Streets projects. The Traffic Safety Advisory Committee has been meeting. We met today and getting closer to finalizing a traffic calming / traffic safety policy. We've made some good headway on that. So that is finally going to be something that we will have in place and be able to kind of systematically address some of these longstanding issues that have been hanging out there for a while without a home. Let's see, as far as transportation stuff goes, we do have that shared streets money. I've reached out to Green International. We need a little bit of help in terms of locating the exact location of the final location for the crosswalk and the rapid flashing beacon in front of town building. It doesn't really seem like where it exists right now is the best place for it. Certainly given the past at that site, but also because of the sight lines. So we're going to ask them to come in for a very small contract and just help us really understand the sight lines and some of the traffic issues there and get it right. Because we do have the funds to put it in place and we want to do it and we need to do it prior to this fall. So that work will be happening soon. Our Lower Village discussion, we're going to try to get still a public forum going for September. Anytime now. I should be getting something back from our consultants. We've kind of been going back and forth, so I'm waiting for that. And then Malcolm and I, in the meantime, have been working on a whole host of bylaw updates and rules and regulations updates. And I think what we're going to do is try to get them all onto the website for the board going forward over the next several months here, so that anytime we update something, it's on a place where you can easily go to it and review it, because otherwise it's going to be very hard to just keep providing paper copies of things and constantly updating and never knowing what version you're looking at. Some of the things we're working on, obviously we have the the active adult neighborhood overlay district regulations, which we'll talk about tonight. We've made some edits to the subdivision rules and regulations from some longstanding kind of maintenance things that we've been wanting to take care of that the board has brought up in the past. We have tried to streamline the erosion control section of the special permit rules and regulations to try to get the stormwater management section to be similar to what is in the subdivision regs, because we've had years now of questions about what exactly is required for an erosion control special permit. Included some language about tiered traffic studies, which we'll be able to talk about. Made some edits to the sidewalk bylaw, to portions of the parking bylaw, and are working on the accessory apartment bylaw. So there's going to be a lot of different stuff happening and things to think about. So we'll try to get a system in place where we can feel good about where we are on one thing before we move to the next. Because I think, you know, there's a lot that's been kind of hanging out there for a while that we finally have some breathing room to tackle. So we just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that everybody feels like it's doable. So more on that to come, but at least we will, I think, be talking about those AAN regs tonight. And I think I will leave it there.
Laurie, you're muted.
Sorry. All right. Try that again. So the first
Sorry, sorry, actually before, just Chuck Black, I think he's on, just, I had him, I don't think he made it into the agenda, but just he was hoping to be on around 8 for his stuff. I don't know if you want to move anything around or.
And this is for the Joanne Drive minor mod.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's right, Laura.
So I know Katie and Mark are also here, so
Right.
that's on the agenda first. So why don't we do that first, and then
Okay.
Joanne Drive would be next anyway, because we're skipping over Hallocks Point.
Exactly. Okay. So as Karen alluded to, the first discussion topic is the follow-up to One White Pond Road. I know we all went out there, whether it be together or separate. And then we got a note from Sue today, or in our packets for tonight as well. So I guess I will, Jesse, it's my impression that the goal of tonight's conversation will be to offer our recommendation to
The town administrator,
exactly.
right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so I will open it up for comments from the board based on all that's been discussed thus far, as well as your visit.
Yeah, I have a comment, and that is that seems pretty clear that the drain is not useful where it is. That was confirmed by what Sue said, but what was missing, and maybe she didn't think it was her job, was what she recommends happen. So I don't know what the town administrator is looking for as a recommendation. Is it just that the drain doesn't need to be there and someone else is going to figure out what to do with it, or what?
I mean, I think it would probably be both. What we think should happen based on information we've gotten over the course of, I'd say, the past couple months. One is we certainly have what Katie and Mark had suggested. We have what Steve Nadeau had suggested as options, as well as what our last conversation had been. So I don't know if you have any comment on that, John, or not.
I guess I don't recall what was the recommendation from Steve, that
So
it be
one,
capped and covered over?
go ahead.
The
Jessica,
woman,
wanna-
can you hear her? The woman speak?
Well,
She's the chair, so just listen to how she talks to people.
So
Whoever that is, we can hear you. But okay.
Um,
Go ahead,
yeah, go ahead.
Jesse. Do you have do you want to share with us, Steve, what Steve?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wanted to answer John's question for him. So Steve had suggested a couple different things. He's like, yep, you could cap the drain, call it good. He said, or you could, what he and his team could do is basically put some landscape fabric over the top of it, cover it with stone, loam and seed it. And he said, that way, if there is some sort of event, snow melt, whatever, that it still would provide some functionality, but yet it would, if you were to look, if the layperson was to look there, they would just see a flat expanse of grass as it existed, as it's similar to like what's on that frontage otherwise. And so you wouldn't really know it was there. So those were his two things. And then I know that after that, Katie had brought up the issue of the liability of the drain itself. And so the conversation has kind of evolved to this point.
And Jesse, just a clarifying question.
Mhm.
The landscaping that can be done either if it is or isn't capped, correct?
Yeah, I think to the average person looking at it, both of those scenarios, either one, the end result will look the same.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the what you were saying about put landscaping material and then stones up on top of that and then sod? How long does would that coating last? Like 20 years? Like, I mean, if that starts breaking down, would those rocks fall down into the drain, and would that create, I mean, isn't that drain an extension of something else? Isn't it connected with other things? I mean, would that 20 years, when that starts to disintegrate, would that create a problem and somebody would have to go look for it if something wasn't draining correctly?
Well, we have the drain shown on the as-built, so that's always helpful. We know exactly where it is and how to get to it. The rock that Steve had originally talked about in conversations was like a trap rock, so it was bigger than sliding through any grate or anything like that.
Okay.
So yes, obviously things would break down. I think likely what would happen before that is just all of the sod and the roots and everything would probably slow down the amount of infiltration there over time, just like French drains tend to silt in over many, many years. So, but yeah, so I think that's as much as I can say about it.
Other planning board member comments?
So what is, I know Denise, the town administrator, was looking for input from the planning board. What in particular are they looking for? For us to tell her whether we think the drain is necessary or not?
Yeah, I think Denise was basically like, look, the planning board obviously had the bulk of the correspondence around why the drain was installed, what the original purpose was. Around, they controlled the budget for its installation. So I'd rather hear from them about whether or not they think it should be either capped or removed before, for lack of a better term, she bugs in and makes the decision. She just wanted to defer to the board on that topic.
So, I mean, at this point, what's on the table is capped or removed. I don't know that we're going to have anyone here that wants it removed because that would be an expense. So it seems like the viable options are capped or kept, and either way, it would be landscape. There would be some landscaping done so that it looks nice and you don't know it's necessarily there. So I guess I'd look for planning board members to weigh in on either one of those options. Nancy?
I know that Katie was concerned about liability because Steve had mentioned mulch getting in there, whatever. It seems to me with the landscape fabric, the cover, the stone, the loam, all that other stuff, mulch getting in there from the yard wouldn't be an issue because we're putting so many organic materials on it already. So I would think they don't have a liability issue when the town is going to cover it themselves with material. right?
So, Nancy, I think the issue that Steve was coming at was the new stormwater regulations that says you can't put a compost pile within so many feet.
Right.
Yeah,
Of
so I
a
think that's why
active.
Katie was
drain, though, right?
concerned. That's why she wants it plugged. So
Right.
if it's plugged up, then that's not an issue.
Yeah. I mean, it seems
Would
to
only
me
be an
that-
issue if it were an active drain.
Right.
seems to me, we can all agree that a drain at that location is minimally useful to begin with. And putting the fabric and the other layers on top of it is going to make it function very minimally. It
Yeah.
seems that it's not even worth it. We should just cap it. And frankly, I mean, I don't know the details, but my guess is that if by any strange circumstances in the beginning, in the end, that a drain there might be useful, it wouldn't be hard to uncap it. Because it's just a plate, I assume, just a plate over that thing and with dirt over it, and it's not that far below the surface. So it seems like if it's a problem in the future that we need a drain there, which I can't think why we would, but that we could undo this fairly easily. So I think the easiest thing is just to cap it.
And so I know there are a few public hands up, but what I want to do is get each of the planning board's thoughts out there before we call upon for public comment. So I hear what John just said loud and clear. I'd look for other board members to comment as well.
So based on what, on Sue's email, it looks pretty clear that it's not really necessary and that it could be capped, but I think we should just add the issue that the statement that there is a slight possibility of a very small amount of water that will be there for a short period of time in a heavy rain event, just so that the property owners are aware of that.
Okay. And Karen, do you have any other comment in terms of what John's put on the table?
About cap it, I would say cap it and then put the landscape fabric and loam it like the highway department recommended. And I think I recall when we were on the site walk, I believe Katie and Mark were recommending that it be capped rather than removed.
And we'll certainly let
Yeah.
them speak in a moment. Nancy, do you have a comment or reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I would go with capping it and then making it not visible. And, you know, it's sort of a combination of both things that Steve suggested, but I don't think it should be removed.
All right. Meg, anything additional to offer?
No, I'm fine with whatever we decide.
Mark, anything additional? Mark Jones, anything additional to offer?
If it is not within the easement, it should be cut back enough so that it is inside the easement right of way so that the town has control over capping and uncapping in the future.
Jesse, can you remind us on the location, how much of it is in the easement and how much of it is not? You're on mute.
It basically straddles the property line. If you look at the ASBIL plans, which is the best rendition of what I can get in terms of its final location. So whether or not it could literally be somehow shaved back, that might be a difficult thing to pull given the design. It's more likely that there would need to be like some sort of key bump out type of thing where the right of way has a little bump in it to basically encapsulate it or bring it into the public right of way, or that you'd need some sort of other easement to make sure that the town had access.
So if we wanted to undo the cap, then we would need some kind of an
So
easement
get
or
it
something.
there, yeah.
Good question. Because it's right on the line, I honestly just don't know how that would be done. I mean, it's got a foot in both camps, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could try to find out the answer to that, but I just don't know
Okay.
confidently enough to say.
I think that alone, I mean, given what Sue has said, I agree with what John is saying. And I think given what Sue has said, combined with the fact that it is not all in the right of way, it's kind of straddling the line. And frankly, I don't know that we could even work on it. Even if we considered it all in the right of way, I'm pretty sure we couldn't work on it without an easement anyways. To me, that's another reason to cap it, given that that's what the homeowners have requested, because frankly, they need to give us permission to go on there, even to work on it to begin with. So I mean, I think it sounds like everybody's on that same page. And so, Mark, I will invite you to make comment now.
Okay. I just wanted to share that Sue's note came in very clear, although she does call me Katie's husband, which I
Yeah.
appreciate.
I wonder what Katie thought of that.
I'm sure she was on board with it as well. However, when I talked to Sue that day, she basically said to me that the drain is absolutely useless, and the way where it is, and even for the future. And we talked about capping it. Unfortunately, she didn't put that in her note, but we actually did talk about that, and she thought that was a good idea. I just wanted to share that with you, and let you know that that is what she said. You wanted to confirm that with her, you could, but I think that's the idea, is to cap it, and then the town was going to loom that area, and then loom around the sidewalk, the driveway of Presti's property. The areas that were in question from before, the areas that needed to be, finished off, loomed, and so everything would be level over there, and all the looming would be done. And
Okay.
it's not much loom, but anyway, that was the idea. Okay,
I
thanks.
see Katie also, oh, did she just leave?
No, she just moved.
Oh. Like, where'd she go? I thought Katie has her hand up as well. Did you want to say something?
Just briefly, I wanted to thank you guys for coming out. And I also want to make sure that it's has loam and seed when they do that whole area and that trench in front. So I'd hope that you'd put that on the note. Your speaker's on. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does make sense.
I just don't want liability. I don't like being threatened, so I don't really want to be in that position ever again. And that's the end. Again, thank you.
Okay.
So Laurie, I just wanted to confirm with Katie and Mark that they're okay with it being capped and they don't want it removed. Because I think if we remove it, it's just going to cause more.
Yeah. More disruption.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct. Capping
Okay.
capping is what we prefer.
Okay.
Only because of the letter from Steve.
Yep.
Okay.
Would we be able to kind of put a time frame on getting this done so it doesn't drag on with highway, maybe?
We can make that recommendation
Yeah,
to the town
recommendation.
administrator.
Right, it's
Yeah.
not our call, I realize.
Right.
Yeah.
We can
I mean,
recommend,
I would say we should recommend that it happen
Right.
ASAP.
yeah.
Yeah. I thought there was one other person with their hand up, but I don't see anyone right now. Was there anyone else from the public that wanted to speak? All right, so then it sounds like the planning board is recommending that we cap it and then certainly do the landscaping, meaning sod, loom, or what have you, to make it look like it's part of the lawn area. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then in addition to what we just said is that it happen ASAP, given how long that's
Exactly.
outstanding, correct?
Definitely.
Correct.
Jesse, do we want to take a vote on that? Are you okay with just writing up what we just said? Or how do you want to handle?
I think it's worth a vote.
Okay.
Yep.
So can I hear a motion with that recommendation? Or maybe a motion to send that recommendation to the town administrator?
So I
Okay.
move that we compose a letter to the town administrator indicating the planning board's preference to have the drain capped and then covered over with loam and seeded, graded properly, and this work be accomplished as soon as possible.
I second.
Can I say one thing?
Can we just add a statement, just saying that our consulting engineer noted that there could be a relatively small amount of water that would be only visible during a heavy downpour? I just want that just recorded someplace, just in case something comes up in the future.
And should we add that the homeowners agree with our recommendation also?
Yeah, that's good.
Can I say one other thing?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that when you do this, that you're not just doing the whole for the lumen seating, because it's supposed to be across along Presley's drive
Right.
yacht as well, and that little jetty, that little piece that jets out in between the sidewalk and his property,
Mhm.
and the driveway. That's all supposed to be lumen seated as well. So I just want to mention that too. Thank you.
And I don't know if it's necessary, but should we add that future work beyond this project would require permission from the homeowners to,
Yeah, I think we should add that.
just for the future, you know?
If it's on the homeowner's property.
Right, because it
Right.
exists on both sides.
I
So
think-
if,
Maybe we can just indicate that it is actually straddling the line and therefore future work would need
Require an easement or
a
something.
temporary easement. All right. So
Might be the biggest motion we've ever done. I don't know.
I know.
I
You have enough, Jesse?
a paragraph.
Especially with the area that should be loamed and seeded.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I heard a motion, I believe somebody seconded it, correct?
thought
I
it was Meg.
second. So,
Meg did.
Meg, okay.
All right, any other discussion? All right, if not, we'll take a roll call vote. So Karen,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Meg,
Aye.
Nancy,
I,
and I. All right. So then next up, we will move on to Joanne Drive minor modification. I believe Chuck is on the call.
I just wanted to thank everybody for that.
You're welcome, Mark. Okay, so Jesse, I don't know if, well, is Chuck giving us the summary of the minor mod or were you?
Well, I think since Chuck is here, he can give us the background for the request, and then I'm happy to go through the key points that
Okay,
that I wanted to make based on that for the minor modification.
all right. Chuck, can you hear us?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think it was just coincidence that I saw that this was on the agenda tonight. So that's when I said to Malcolm, well, I have time, I'll join in. But I think the discussion is that in relation to the bound/monuments and the street trees, we're not ready to install those at this time because we still have too much construction work going on, and we would be concerned about damaging them. And I believe in your regs, it says that prior to any occupancies, the area where that lot is, the trees and the bounds need to be installed. And the town has a cash bond for all this work. And so I had said to Jesse, it's not practical to do the work at this time. We're going to be needing an occupancy for the first house next month. So could we make an accommodation for that? And I think the other item is that I purchased a total of about 36 acres. 26 acres is going to be donated to the Conservation Commission, I believe. I've had numerous conversations with Kathy and my attorney on getting this done. but I don't think it can be done prior to the first occupancy. And when I spoke to Kathy yesterday, she said she's had conversations with Jesse and thought that an accommodation could be made. And unless I forgot anything, I think that's sort of the highlights of the conversation. And maybe Jesse can jump in if I miss something.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, do you want to add anything, or do you want to start going through?
No, I think that's the those are the hits right there, and I've tried to kind of codify that in a way that makes sense from the past decision and from you know, the construction schedule going forward. So I think at this point it might just be helpful to move through the decision. Chuck did provide this to me in an email, so we do have that kind of minor modification request. So for what that's worth. Good.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments from the board before we actually look at the decision? Okay, Jesse, just to clarify, we're going to be looking at, there were two versions.
Yeah, so there should be one noted as the updated version. And if in the way that you know you have the right one is section 7.6 includes the findings and conditions, whereas the prior version I left it blank, but I was able to close the loop with Kathy and come up with some draft language.
Okay, and I know that one had comments in there as well.
Yep. So I think Malcolm said he had listed it as updated version, either right above or below.
Sure, if I have the right one.
Do that.
On the website.
Tell you, yesterday when I got in the shower, yeah, as soon as I turned on the shower, there was one. A bee? Oh,
All right, so let's start going through this a page at a time. So it looks like the first page, let's see, I know you filled in the date. Is there any comment on the first page?
No.
So is it customary, if this is a minor modification decision, is it customary that the top would note it's a minor?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, this was copy and paste there. I'll fix the top.
Okay,
Yeah, it definitely should. It will say minor mod 1. The
Yeah.
date won't be 2017. So I'll take care of that.
all right. Anything else on page 1? All right, let's jump to page 2. So first off, let me ask the board's opinion. Do you believe that what is being asked, revision that's being asked qualifies for a minor modification?
I believe it does.
Right, because it doesn't change any of the outcomes.
No.
It just moves the schedule a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. So unless anyone disagrees, do you have any other comments on page 2?
No.
All right. So then moving on to page 3.
So on page 3, after the first condition, that next paragraph, Kendall Homes it says plan, should be plant.
good.
Thanks.
All right, any other comments on page 3? All right, then I guess let's move on to page 4.
Sorry, do have a question on 3.
Sure.
On section 7.4, where a letter is going to be provided to the new owner, is something stronger required of the new owner in terms of right of entry in order to put these trees on the land?
That's a good point.
Is
it-
perhaps also the subdivision developer needs to have a right of entry in order to put them in as well when they sell the properties? Both we as a remediator and the developer as a seller needs to have that right retained.
So are the trees going to be in fact on the private lot, or are they going to be in the right of way?
So if you recall, there's two sets of, there's two different areas of
Oh,
trees.
that's right. Yeah.
Yep. The buffer area is
Buffer area.
definitely on lot 1.
Mhm.
And so that would, I think Mark makes a good point. It's not complicated, but it just changes the nature of the response that we would want the homeowner to provide. And then the others are, some of them may be in the public right of way, although some of them also might be and likely will be on the lot 1 property itself.
So definitely need some kind of a legal document.
It basically, right. So not only will they be communicated to, they will need to actually grant permission
Correct.
for it to happen, whether it be us or them or the developer.
So under the condition that language should be stronger rather than a letter shall be provided.
Okay.
Good catch, Mac.
I mean, essentially, so what you're saying is you would need to see a signed right of entry agreement from the prospective homeowner.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I know just from my discussions with Chuck and that they're well aware of this stuff, so I don't think that this is going to be difficult. So.
Okay.
Okay.
And so Jesse, on your new findings under 7.6, do we want to make a finding that the Conservation Commission is in agreement to receive the open land?
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah, it's because you're saying it's the applicant's preferred recipient, but
Yeah, okay, yep.
add a finding that they agree to be the recipient.
How about the, what Mark was talking about the, do we want to put something that we have to make sure that the land that's being conveyed, is cleaned up, and all the old equipment is removed?
That still is in the original decision, so I'm not too concerned about that, Meg. It's almost verbatim the way you described it.
Okay.
It's
All right.
one of the reasons why Kathy and the Concom had wanted to push this off, because they'd like the majority of work to be done and they'd like to know
Yeah.
that it's in good shape before it gets conveyed.
Okay.
So we're not amending that condition.
Correct.
So that brings us to the comment in here prior to X building.
Is it reasonable to say the last building permit? You said you talked to Kathy. I don't know what's a reasonable time frame for.
Yeah, I mean, she had suggested, you know, she was like, maybe the 6th building permit, maybe by a date certain. And that's why I had just said, you know, maybe it's not tied to the last, so to speak, but that it is far enough along. So I was trying to think of, and maybe Chuck can weigh in here, you know, the majority of the work that was going to take place on the open land was going to be the stormwater management area. I think it was number 2. It was the big basin on the south side of the road.
Right.
But once that's done, there's really not a lot of other work. Obviously, there's moving around and construction equipment and stuff, but so I was feeling like, yeah, by number 5 or 6, I would expect that the majority of the work that needed to
Yeah.
take place should be
Yeah.
done with at that point. So,
Yeah, I would rather tie it to a building permit rather than a date certain, because
Yeah.
Yep.
they
I
could have
agree.
all their building permits and then still have time, and yeah.
Is there kind of a conflict in terms of the requirement to remove old equipment from the conservation land and the potential that it might be demanded to be transferred before that removal timeline?
No, because that's still a condition, so it's clear that they would have to clean it up before they transfer it.
yeah, I think the cleanup would
Yeah.
then come before the whatever building permit, right?
Correct, right.
All right, so how do people feel about then the last building permit?
Yeah, I'd like to see maybe the penultimate, just to give us a little more room and make it a little more important.
So, John, what are you saying?
Not the last one, but maybe the second to the
Okay,
last.
the second to last one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mark, were you gonna say something?
Nope, thanks.
Nancy?
Yeah, I agree with John. It gives a little more room, you know? Not quite the last one.
Mhm.
Okay. It sounds like everyone's in agreement. All right. Any other comments on page 4?
And again, Jesse, you have 6 members participating, so we need to figure out. should
Yeah,
be 5 of
I'll
us.
clean that up
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
Is that up in the front that you saw that, or just based on the bottom?
I'm seeing it on the, last, the signature page.
Signature page, yeah, I'll clean that up.
I didn't catch it up. Just check, you usually say who was present. So I just
Yeah,
checked
yeah,
that
right.
too.
I'll
yeah.
take a look and see what I got.
All right. Any other comments on the draft? Okay, so I do think that we should first take a vote that we have declared that it is a minor modification. So look for a motion on that.
I move that we declare the request for modification to the Joanne Drive definitive subdivision and plan conservation development and erosion control special permit to be a minor modification not requiring a public hearing.
second.
Any other discussion on that point? If not, we'll take a roll call vote. So Nancy,
Aye.
Meg,
I,
John,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
and I. And then the next question for the board is, do you feel comfortable enough based on the revisions we've done tonight to vote on the decision itself?
I'm comfortable. One question I have. I know a lot of this has to do with the buffer and other, what's the name? The abutters there. Are they aware of this modification?
The Bracy's, right?
The Bracy's, yeah.
Are they aware of the modification?
And specifically,
Yeah,
with them staking the trees and everything.
yeah, I mean, the.
'Cause I know they've
conversation-
been very sensitive about this whole thing, so I just,
I mean, maybe Chuck can confirm, but he and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago by phone, and he indicated that he had said to Scott, we got 13 or 15 trees that are required. I'm gonna give you 13, 15 stakes, and you tell me where you'd like them planted.
Okay.
Chuck, I don't know if that sounds accurate to you based on our conversation.
That is accurate on your, the approved subdivision plans. There are 15 trees for me to plant in that buffer. And I'm hoping that maybe later this week I'll get to meet with Scott. And I'm fine that he can tell me where he wants those 15 trees in that buffer zone.
So you haven't had that discussion with him yet?
We've met numerous times. We just
Okay.
have not nailed it down specifically where those are going to go.
Okay, but he's okay with, he knows you're requesting this modification and,
Well, I could be wrong, but I don't think that these trees were a condition of occupancy. I don't think.
okay,
I believe it's these are not street trees. I believe it's the street trees and or the bounds that are in your, I guess, bylaws, which
Oh.
other towns don't have. So that's what I was discussing with Jesse. But and as a practical matter, I am hoping that I'm actually going to do all the trees at this lot, both for Scott and the street trees. I am hoping I'm going to do those prior to occupancy. I just wouldn't want to have a case that with supply chain, I can't get the trees, the subcontractor is not available, and the homeowner's ready to move in. So that's why I'm trying to be proactive.
mhm.
On,
I might have been mixing up documents. Was
But I-
that issue in this minor modification?
on 7-4,
Yeah,
it talks about lot 1 and the trees to buffer lot 1.
right.
So and
I'm
we
just
are-
concerned about the sensitivity on
I completely agree.
those property owners and,
Mhm.
I think we should communicate with Scott as the board, and that's who he's come before. You know, just give an update.
Jesse, would it be unreasonable for us to just hold off until next week to
To vote.
vote?
And
Just
yeah,
so the Bracy's,
yeah, that's totally fine. Just as long as we know what the expectation is for
mhm.
our office between now and then. Did you want us to reach out?
Really, I think we would like to hear that from Scott, that he's confirmed what you said to us, Jesse, which is he will be, he is in agreement that he'll be staking out the locations, and that I just want to make sure that whatever we're putting in here, we've got confirmation from him, and if he has concerns
Input.
over what has
Yeah.
transpired, he has a chance to tell us before we put this to bed.
I agree.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah, next week is fine. We can fit. Yep, not a problem.
Okay.
Could I ask a question? Jesse, do you believe that the buffer trees in that neutral zone are a condition of occupancy?
No, they are not. We were actually silent on when it had to be done in the decision, but the street trees are a different matter.
Okay, so again, to the board, I've met with Scott several times. I've been in communication several times. We're trying to meet maybe as soon as Thursday. I also, which Jesse knows, met with the neighbor abutting lot 2. And, but again, I was not here tonight to address the trees in the buffer. I was simply here to have a minor modification for the street trees and the bounds and the open space so that we could obtain an occupancy permit for this lot. And so I don't know the procedure with the board, but if we could put closure to that and next Tuesday, come back and Scott and I potentially could both be here and address his trees. And again, I spoke to the nursery today. Those trees are available. So if he and I are in agreement on where they're going, I'll put them in early September. I have water and electricity at lot 1, and we can water them. But I
So
think that
Chuck, I don't doubt anything you're saying. And it sounds very reasonable. I'm just concerned about the sensitivity and this issue with the abutter.
And what we're talking about here is there's language here on page 3 that references a condition for the screening. And we certainly are putting in the finding that the abutter is indicating with stakes where they'll be planted. I just feel that
You
given
just need to confirm that, yeah, with the
given the
abutter.
tongue lashing we took previously, that it's in our own best interest to give him a chance to make comment and confirm before we close out the decision as written.
okay, and can the decision as written take that item out? In other words, again, it's not a condition of occupancy.
Well, it is a condition
condition
for
is-
lot 1, and if the lot 1 is already going to be conveyed.
So,
Similarly, if you sell the lot and then you plant the trees, you need to have right of entry to plant those trees in compliance with the screen that you want to put in. So you need to retain that right in order to make sure, in case your buyer doesn't like the tree.
All right, so we'll come back next Tuesday,
okay,
and I'll touch base with Scott, and we'll see if we can both be here next Tuesday.
and again, we're not looking for Scott to be here. I think Jesse can get confirmation from him. We're not even looking to discuss it any further. We're simply looking to get confirmation prior to us voting. So it's
Yeah, we're making a finding about what he said, so we just want to confirm that.
and again, we're not even looking for him to come to a meeting. We're simply looking to have a conversation with him prior to the meeting.
Okay, so Jesse and I will speak this week, and I'll try to get with Scott and put closure on where these trees are going in that buffer zone.
And again, we're not even saying that you need to put closure on.
Location.
It's just, we're trying to just get confirmation that he understands he's going to be staking them out of the location, and clearly what will be in the decision is that the person buying lot 1 is giving permission to come in and do the work. So it's not that we need to know where they're going for
Okay,
us to vote.
okay, I understand.
Okay.
And Mark did have a good point, again, about the right of entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the good news, Chuck, is that the decision is written and you heard the revisions tonight. And so you at least will know what will be in the decision.
Okay, very good, and I thank you all for your time tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. All right, so we are skipping Hallocks Point, and so essentially last item on the agenda is really around rules and regs. So let's jump to that. I think is everyone, I think given that this is the first time people are seeing it, I'm assuming we will go page by page. Does anybody have any other suggestion or any comment on that? All right, so we will start with really page 4. And Jesse, the only changes are what's outlined in red, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So really looking for 2 types of input here. One is any comment on what's proposed in red, And then certainly as we go through page by page, you can also, if you think that something should have been revised that hasn't been revised, you can call that out as well.
Mhm.
So with that, on page 4, we've got the definition of open land. Any comment on that?
Looks good.
All right. On to page 5, which is mostly red.
And it's all new definition.
It's all
Right.
new, but keep in mind that the only truly new thing, that actually nothing here is truly new because pocket open land came from the zoning bylaw and primary and secondary conservation resources was simply pulled over from the PCD bylaw. Because
Okay.
we borrowed so much of that, I wanted to try to make them both consistent.
So one request I have, starting with pocket land, but probably affects other things in
Mhm.
other areas, is anytime we've got a decimal, I'd like it to be 0 point whatever. From a readability standpoint, it will guarantee no one will misinterpret it.
Good point.
Yeah, I thought it said 5 acres and that looked big to me.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That, I can do that, yeah.
And
Okay.
I think that should just be our standard format for decimals.
Sounds
Spoken
good.
like a good WPI graduate.
It's customary in many legal documents to spell out
Absolutely.
numerals.
All right. Any other, given what Jesse said, are there any comments on these definitions? All right, let's move on to page 6 then. All right, if not, we can go to top of page 7, 171. So I guess I have a question on this. The posting of security,
Mhm.
is this really about
Security or surety or?
I know,
What's
I-
a proper term?
the word, this section gave me pause because not knowing what we typically do, if you were not knowing what we typically do, you can interpret that to mean,
So I think what needs to happen there is that that section, I just want to double check something here. I think that section really needs to reference the subdivision
What?
regulations around posting of security, unless we want to pull all that language into here.
So
But-
so you're basically referring to a performance guarantee, right?
Exactly. That's, yeah, so I didn't basically, 1.7, I really didn't change that from the original AAN regs from 2002. If we wanted, we could change this section to indicate that provision of security shall be, we'll figure out the language, but that
Yeah.
shall follow the subdivision rules and regulations in terms
For a
of
performance
all of
guarantee.
that.
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
And
we
then-
just, we need to put clarity and context.
right.
I mean, remember, security could mean security of the
Bonds.
property, not monetary guaranteeing something.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it should say performance guarantee, not security.
Okay,
But
Uh,
isn't the other part of this that it's the phasing part
yeah,
rather than the whole thing that we're allowing or? But we don't
so
wanna
the, so
encourage it too much.
1.7 is talking about the performance guarantee and what he added is about the phasing,
Hmm.
right?
That's correct. However, so if that's what we were going to do, I would probably further amend 171 to say something in accordance with section whatever of the subdivision rules and regs that that gives you the that limits the amount of releases that can be provided.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
basically say the board is willing to do it in phases, provided that it's still a maximum of, I think it's 2 partial releases and 1 final release. So there's just some references that we can add.
Well,
So Jesse, I'm reading this as that you're telling them that they can provide the performance guarantee in phases.
that is correct.
So are you saying they need to post the entire performance guarantee and you will release it in phases, or
No,
a little bit of
no, I
both?
think what I'm trying to echo is what the board had indicated during some conversations with Chuck, which is we're fine with the idea of posting the security in phases, but we want to know the plan and the expectation.
Right.
I would say that the board, rather than put a number limit, I would say that they come and present their phasing plan and the board approves it. And if the board approves the phasing plan, then they can put up the performance guarantee in those phases. But that gives us input to, if they come and say, I want to do 10 phases, and we're like, no.
Yeah.
But it gives us the flexibility, depending on what the project is and how it naturally breaks, to entertain that as well, rather than decide right now it's 2 phases or 3 phases or 4 phases.
Okay, I'll figure out how to
great.
make that work.
Yeah.
With it.
But
That makes sense.
and maybe everyone who reads this is understanding, but I guess I go back on page 6 to 1.7, which is, it's just interesting use of the word security. And I'd rather make it more obvious that we're talking about
Performance
setting
guarantee.
up funds for performance guarantee.
Yeah.
My uneducated self in this read that over and over, wondering, did it mean like security force on the property? Or like, I knew it had to be money, but
It just, with no context,
Yeah.
you're like, what are we talking about? Okay.
So can I ask a hypothetical? Suppose some developer gets in trouble halfway or some way through and they elect to not complete the phase 2 and 3 or whatever number of phases the board originally agrees to, and so the bond is never posted and the development is not completed.
But I
although
think
we can get
That's
that
a
kind of
concern I
trouble
had all
anytime.
along with Joanne Drive.
Right.
so. I guess my question, and let's use Joanne Jive as an example. If he only ended up, I guess it kind of depends on, is the infrastructure he promised in place or not the shared infrastructure? Because if he only developed 4 out of the however many houses, do you care?
I think we're saying is that each phase needs to be essentially complete and a standalone unit, so that if what Mark's scenario happens, we can say, okay, you know,
We
you
don't
can
care.
stop now because what you've done is complete enough to be usable.
So
phase.
to me, that's important with what we accept as a phasing plan.
Exactly.
So, you know, if sort of the overarching or underarching pieces are part of phase 1 and that he only ends up creating 4 out of the however many houses, would we care? That's sort of the question to be asking ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, certainly we would care if he did certain things, but I do think we need to make sure that in the phasing plan approval that we take that into consideration.
Mhm.
And maybe for context, we should put a statement in here that our expectation would be that each phase is I don't know what the right word is, but to John's point, standalone or piece of work,
Mhm.
mutually exclusive piece of work, so that, or that, you know, we can put language in there that says, the overarching common infrastructure needs to be done. Something of that nature, so that in the end, we don't really care if they don't move forward with future phases.
As long as the whole place hasn't been cleared first.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So Jesse, refresh my memory about the subdivision rules. Do we have language in there that accommodates phasing the performance guarantee? Or is it just you
go about it in a different way. You call it,
Yeah.
the subdivision regs call it partial release. But that's,
Yeah.
That's really,
So it's assuming everything is secured or built.
yeah, partial
and you
release
get
is,
parcel
I
release,
gave you
yeah.
$1 million. I did a bunch of work that's worth 300,000. I can show
Yeah.
you that I
Yeah.
can get access to lots 1 and 2, so release it.
I
Here
mean-
we're saying we're kind of taking the onus on that. We're kind of making all that happen at the beginning.
but
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 it's
we're actually
not the
adding
same,
something
yeah.
that, and if we're using Joanne Drive as an example, we would want to go back and add it to the subdivision rules and regs as well, if that's what we want.
I'm uncomfortable with
Mhm.
allowing the
Well,
performance guarantee to be posted in phases. I don't have any issue with releasing it in phases.
So that's interesting, because
So they have a
that's
choice
what we
of
did,
either,
isn't it?
huh?
Isn't that what we did?
That's what we did with Joanne Drive, and I wasn't comfortable with it, but we
Okay.
did it. Yeah.
And you know something, I think that it's a heck of a lot more work.
It is.
I mean, I think that we have had endless, and it's worked out okay, but I don't get why we're not expecting a full performance bond for the work to be done at the beginning. And then if
Yeah.
we want to release it, in phases, that's absolutely fine. But I feel like we should be accepting a performance bond for the entire project. And I'm not crazy
So
about.
And the developer has a choice. They can either do the work. If they don't want to do the work ahead of time, then they can post the performance guarantee.
So if that's how people feel, then we should probably state that with clarity.
Mhm.
So I'll
That
continue my hypothetical. For example, suppose it's phased in 3 parts and the common building is going to get built in the last phase or something like that. And they halt at phase 1 and the first phase doesn't have the common building, which we are pretty interested in. At the very least, I would want guidance in the regs saying you got to have the common building in the phase 1 performance guarantee, no matter what. And then I would feel more comfortable then, phasing whatever rest of the project might be.
But frankly, what I'm hearing from Karen is we should just state that the normal way to do this is you
Do the
do it
work
or
or post-
performance guarantee everything, and we're willing to release it in phases.
I think
And-
that's better.
And
Yeah.
I think, let Chuck Black be the anomaly. Rather than invite more of it.
I definitely don't want to invite you.
Just look what we went through with the phases on Joanne Drive, which is a small subdivision.
Right.
Not only that, but we're actually talking about how complicated it gets because we would have to then look at the phasing plan and convince ourselves that we're not going to be stuck in some unwanted situation.
And it's involving homeowners now coming in when things aren't done.
Okay, so then is everyone in agreement that we don't want to put in here that we allow phasing? We should actually put in that we're willing to release in phases, but
Right.
we actually want the whole performance guarantee up front.
Correct.
That's
Good.
my position. I
That
don't
doesn't
know.
prevent them from asking to do it differently and us agreeing to it, but let that be the
Yeah. Set the stage with what we really want.
I agree.
Because if
one
you
thing
put
you do
that in
get-
there, they're gonna just not,
One thing you do get by giving future boards guidance on this is putting strictures to say how to handle it when the request comes. I'm not saying I'm necessarily an advocate, but by putting some guidance, you let somebody who's never been exposed to this kind of ask to, respond thoughtfully.
Yes, exactly. So Jesse, is that clear enough?
clear as mud.
It's being recorded, right? So you can go back.
Yeah, no, I.
That doesn't still mean it was clear.
I see the way forward. It's actually much simpler.
It is.
for you to do it that
Yeah.
way. Okay.
All right, awesome.
Lori, may I have a 1 minute break, 45
sure.
seconds? We'll be
Yeah.
right back.
Yeah, maybe another way to think about that point is what's the advantage of the town to allow phasing? I don't know. I mean, it's certainly
I
more
can't think of the
complicated
reason.
and it's higher risk,
Yeah, because
frankly.
you could have a development half done. The developer could walk and the site could be cleared, even though it's got proper access, the rest of the site could be cleared and we're left with a mess. And no performance guarantee to complete it.
Right. So what about the
It would
case
be,
of Athens Lane? That's a big project. I mean,
Mhm.
we require, I don't know what the performance guarantee might be on that.
They have the option to do the work before we release.
Yeah, if you
building permits.
recall,
Yeah.
Regency was staring down. Quite honestly, the town doesn't want an enormous bond or performance guarantee.
Right, we'd rather have them do the work.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened when Regency came through. They were looking at like this multi-million-dollar bond, and they said, you know what? We're going to go in, we're going to install the leach field, we're going to do a bunch of the infrastructure work, put in all the piping, and then we'll come back to you and we'll ask for a performance guarantee. And I remember the board and others saying like, good, because we don't want to do that work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For us to
right.
go and do that, yeah. So anyway, so I
So
think
it gives them the incentive to do the work up front,
right.
which is preferable in my mind.
Agreed.
All right. So I'm assuming there's nothing else on page 7 since there's very little else on page 7. Let's go to page 8. If there's no comment on page 8, let's jump to page 9.
That language, the review fees, that just right from the regs, the subdivision regs.
Yeah, I just pulled it over.
Yeah.
For whatever reason,
I'm surprised it wasn't.
AN regs
yeah.
from back in '02 just didn't include some. I just figured.
It
might-
should, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of semantics, but the second line of 241 should really be ensure, not insure. I'm pretty sure we're not taking out an insurance policy.
And yes. That's good. Yeah. Okay.
So question, Jesse, who does the preliminary review? Like, is this Sue and like, who does this?
It's typically myself, Kathy, as applicable. But no, it's staff, and basically we're going through making sure that there's no obvious glaring issues in regards to zoning or what use is being proposed, making sure the application is mostly complete.
Basically making sure we're not wasting our time.
Yep.
What,
Not
what
wasting
my,
theirs for that matter, yeah.
what my question is does this $500 carry, is it enough for the time that anybody like you and Kathy, and Sue put into this? Is this sufficient?
What, $500 for the application? What are you
Right,
referring
for
to?
the preliminary review.
Okay.
But the
I mean, I'm
fee,
just,
the
I'm
fee
just
isn't,
curious.
the fee isn't just for the preliminary.
Yeah, the fee
That's
is
for the-
around the entire,
Even though it's in this section, it's not just because of the preliminary review.
where is the actual $500 reference?
Under
2.4.
2.4. I mean, my point is kind of that you're putting a lot of time in the preliminary review, and then you're saying that this covers the $500. I just want to make sure that the actual preliminary review or the fee covers the time that you put into this and other people put into it. And then if you're putting additional time at a later time, then maybe we should think about this fee.
Well,
So
why,
even aside from preliminary fee, is $500 enough?
and why is the fee in the preliminary review section?
So that's actually not the,
Oh,
so I'll be honest with you, section 2.4, I can't think of a scenario where I myself am requesting another $500 for a review.
no, it right away, it says the
Yeah.
first, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, this is just, I think if the board is interested in feeling, if, I think the place to change it is in the special permit fees
Yeah.
themselves. So for instance, a subdivision is 2,500, a special permit is 500. This is obviously a big special permit. So I think if we want to have that debate, we can have it around there. But for me to ask for additional money because I have to continue a preliminary review.
Yeah. That was in our initial, right?
Yeah, I just
I
don't.
think
I
think
agree. I don't think it belongs there.
But I think it seems like it then it's just the way it's written. It seems to me it's just because if people are coming back over and over and over before they submit saying, can you look at this? Okay, now I've decided to go this way. Can you look at that? Now I've decided to go I changed my mind. I'm going a different way. I don't think this will happen often at all, but I think it sort of just tries to me, it's written so that it discourages someone from using you as a free consultant.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair way to look at it too.
The example that we have in our history is the Spring Hill process, where it took the owners a couple years and several visits to the board. So I can imagine that being expanded upon in the AAN by an inexperienced developer.
It's for developers who basically don't have the right person working on it and is just trying to use staff to help give
Yeah.
them direction. I mean, I think it's fine to be left in there just to discourage that. And I think to your point, Jesse, it likely never happened.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So just kind of along with that, this is just a curiosity question. I mean, do you consider it, I mean, I can see, well, I guess I can see all of you guys, but do you, if somebody is going to develop a plot, I guess it's to our advantage to do a quick preliminary, I mean, really lightweight preliminary review? Or do you feel like if you're actually doing a time-consuming review, why are we not charging for that time? Like outright?
I agree. It's typical for staff to do a preliminary review, and it's very helpful. So we don't get an application that
Has to get sent back right away.
it has to be sent back or denied.
Yeah, I think the preliminary
But,
review.
but
actually-
I'm still thinking that we should just look at the application fee and just,
Yeah.
yeah, and
And
just,
I kind of look at
yeah.
2.4 as it's just in there to discourage use of
Yeah.
staff as consultants. I don't actually think it applies. I think if we want to raise the fee, we raise the overall fee.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I would take it out, because I know Jesse, he wouldn't tell him I need $500.
But
Yeah,
I don't think we
but
should.
even if it's somebody else, yeah.
I don't
yeah.
think we should take it out because I actually think it does a purpose
Deter.
even when we don't use it.
Yeah,
It deters
Yeah.
people from. It just gives them the message that, hey, don't come back here 10 times.
Except if they find out after 3 times they've never been charged, then they could keep coming back.
so this is different, like with the subdivision, we have a preliminary application where it comes to the board and you give them a formal preliminary decision. But that's not what this is all about. This is
I
staff.
mean,
consult-
honestly, this is about reviewing for completeness and validity.
Right,
It's voluntary on their part,
It's
strongly
what's
recommended
supposed to
by
be.
us.
right, yeah,
Okay.
okay, so are we leaving it?
I still say leave it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
It gives Jesse an out if somebody is really going overboard.
Yeah,
Right.
And I agree with Laurie, it is a deterrent, yes.
Yeah. okay,
All right. Let's go on to page 10 then.
Hold on one sec. On
Sure.
page 9, 2.5, the second line, should we update it to select board? If
Oh,
this is
yeah.
our new language.
Yes, we should.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Until I'm better at zoning, I'll do editing in words.
All right. 10. You don't want the legal size file folder?
I just picked up my copy of the bylaws last week. I said, this is too hard online, so now I have one that I can highlight.
I mean, yeah, I just feel like, it's, I mean, I don't know, that was like a nitpicky thing of me, just like, they
Oh,
they send us to it in a banker's box and we'll make sense of it and make sure that,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
although, it would be funny to really write that into a decision that, we're not waiving the folding of the.
I know, I have never penalized anybody from doing that. They come in rolled or they come in, yeah.
Right. So anyway, just
Sometimes they just fold them wonky. I agree.
and then 331 is just not relevant to this kind of permit, because if they don't know what the uses are, they shouldn't be applying for this.
Right.
Yep. All right. On to page 11.
Board of Selectmen in the second line.
Nice.
Thank you.
Search and replace, huh?
Just so folks know, 3.6.2 was based on a discussion and recommendation from Sue Carter.
Yeah, that's great.
I thought that the existing language just looked a little odd to me, and so I just asked her what her thoughts were, and this is where we landed.
Jesse, it seems like on the second line, design of the storm drainage system be based on a,
No, he's got shall be based.
oh, shall be based. Okay, got it. Okay.
Your first sentence of 3.9, the section, are you referring?
What section? Yeah.
What section is it of the, what
Yeah,
rules?
the exception, except regardless of the project size. Okay, so what I'm referring to there is the aspects of the following, which we're about to go through, where the planning board determines that such an analysis is not necessary. So I'll fill that in. You'll know what I mean as we read through this. There are a couple, when we're trying to determine project sizes, the planning board has the ability to say, you know what, this is really a minor project. We actually don't need such and such to be submitted. I think that's all I was trying to say. So obviously, before we get into this, this is a big change here. We haven't done this before. Our previous traffic study requirements were like a paragraph. And so I did some research around, I talked with some other planners, and I came across one from Marin, Toole, and Littleton that had these different kinds of, that broke it down into minor, moderate, and large projects. And based on what I had seen, I felt like this is so much more helpful than the blanket one paragraph traffic study requirement.
It says may or may not be.
Yeah.
Right, right. And so this just really sets out, here's what we want to see, and tries not to kind of overdo it. And so just so you can see in the comments there, I tried to really think about like what would be considered a moderate project, maybe something like Hemingway Farm, and sure enough, when you look at the traffic study they did, it would have fit into that category, whereas
So then-
Regency would have fit into a large.
Jesse, does this basically imply that they have to at least do enough analysis to show us the peak, the number of peak hour trips?
Yeah, yep. Yep, and I think in this, you'll see once we get further along in our bylaw reviews that we've added this into the subdivisions and the erosion and the special permits at large, meaning that, you know, somebody developing in Lower Village or anywhere else should also be able to at least give an estimate of what those peak hour trips are. There are really classic documents out there that traffic engineers refer to for certain uses. So it's not a huge lift to do that, but nonetheless. that's
So
our-
Jesse, back to, just based on what you just explained, I'm looking forward, back to section 3.9,
Yep,
where you're saying all special permit applications, regardless of project size, require a traffic study, but why are you saying except as permitted in section XX? Why don't you just say in
It is-
accordance with?
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Section
probably the
XX.
better way to say it.
Yeah, because I was reading it as that it's required, but it might not be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's a better way to look at it.
I think all that, then my impression is, as we go through this, then all that will happen with the follow-on is that how much information and detail they provide will be determined based on that initial analysis.
Right.
But regardless, the initial analysis will need to be done.
Right.
Exactly. They're gonna need to know a baseline analysis
Yeah.
to know what they need to provide. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And I think for a project like an AAN, that is totally within bounds to request.
Yep. I like this because it also takes a bit of the complete subjectivity of I don't want to do one, so I'm asking not to do one, and that leaves us
Yeah.
in our hands to determine. So this means you've got to at least put forward enough data to tell us.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, what I think, especially because it's in the rules and regs, certain things can be waived. I mean, there's, you know, as you go down through 1 through 5, depending on the type of project, there are certain things that may be more applicable,
Mhm.
or that we would want to put more weight on. So So yeah, so it's a lot. I mean, obviously it's a big addition, but I think, you know, we're going into a phase now where we're seeing some of the older, bigger parcels
Yeah.
get swooped up here, and we're gonna be, I just feel like the town over the next 10 years is gonna be faced with, you know, bigger projects maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna be seeing 5 and 7 lot subdivisions.
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
that we'll get some of those peppered in, but we already know a few on the horizon.
And I like the fact that it's asking for future traffic volume as well.
Mhm. Yeah, this is good. Jesse, you have a couple of things highlighted,
Okay.
or is that just
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a couple
doodling?
things highlighted.
Like on page 13, number 4, you've got a little. Does that mean anything?
You have gray marks?
Yeah,
Oh, I think that's just the
That's the
draft.
draft. Watermark.
okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it can't handle all of the things going on.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, anything anybody wants to call out in this, I guess, page 13, 12 or 13?
A lot.
Hmm.
Which is good. So they have a heads up on what's expected.
I like on page 14 where it calls out, you know, they got to pay attention to pedestrian
Hmm.
circulation.
Yeah.
So what happens with the traffic study? Do we review it? Does some professional review it? Do they get feedback and somehow it gets incorporated into the plan?
We have the ability to have a professional review it.
Does public safety get involved at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect that this is really, no, I mean, basically, it really depends on what the mitigation strategies are. I mean, if we feel like somebody is making a finding based on something technical that we would want to second guess, it just falls right into our typical 53G review with somebody like Places Associates. We can ask for a different firm to weigh in on something specific if necessary, but I think most of the action in terms of review will probably come around what are they proposing they will do with the findings they've made, and that's where we'll want to make sure, just like everything else, that it's been
And,
good.
and I
Yeah,
think
so it would automatically go to Places, and I'm sure they would recommend a traffic engineer if they thought it was needed.
and this is coming in with the application, so I think we can use it in multiple ways. One is it can become input to, is this a good idea or not? Like, is this going to work at all overall? But also it can give us information for findings and conditions as well.
Yeah.
And it also may give us information where we start to ask for changes to their plan as a result of the information.
I'm just wondering if we hear like from Stow Police on what they think of the traffic study, and is it legitimate or do they see it as a problem somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and so to me, that just gives, when we go out and ask other boards and safety and fire, you know, for input to an application, this will frankly will give them a lot more to comment on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Good.
I'm not sure, since I've been on the board, that I've actually seen us
Real traffic study.
anyone,
Yeah.
for traffic analysis. So this is interesting.
Yeah, we usually just get like a couple of sentences that it's not going to
Yeah.
increase the level of service. Yeah.
And we just take their word on it, really. Yeah.
Yeah, when we looked at Hemingway, they gave us peak numbers of trips. We looked at the basic level of service of the road. And then when we did Regency, we were going on an older traffic study that was done for Ridgewood. That was a little bit dated, but at least gave us some indication of what the estimates were. So yeah, those really, you know, they kind of fell short. And if you recall, some of the residents were some of the ones who made the point of like, yeah, this is all well and good, but it really doesn't mean anything. Like, it doesn't really talk about what it means to
What the impact really is, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully, you know, I mean, these are rules and regs. It's not in the zoning bylaw, so hopefully we can find a way to really make it useful for the board. And if we can't, then we can always, it doesn't take a town meeting for us to go back to say, you know what,
Yeah.
not as necessary, you know.
All right. Any comments on this section? I like it.
I'm sorry, I dropped out for a minute or two. What section are you on?
The traffic study.
Got it. Thank you.
We're just completing that section.
All right. If there are no, do people need more time on that section? We can just take a
More
few.
time. Just
Okay.
give me like 2.
Yeah.
Don't see anything in here. Is there anything in here about traffic during the construction phase?
Good question. No, there is not that I recall.
Because remember, even when we were working on, Walcott Street, we were talking about which way the truck should go.
So maybe not in this section, but maybe up front about,
Yeah, maybe up
Yeah.
front, we basically say that they have to present us with a traffic circulation plan for during construction.
yeah. Yeah, that would be different than the traffic study. Yeah,
And you guys requested that at Collings, right? When he was building all that.
right, right.
Yeah,
I would say the place for that kind of thing would be once we get to the specific plan inclusions later on.
Okay.
Like where we say we want to see a landscape plan and erosion control and sediment.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So the open land section, you're basically just changing the term from space to land.
Yep. Yep.
Who's the owner of the Ridgewood open land?
Say that again, Mark. I don't know. Was that?
Who's the owner of the Regency open land at this point?
At Regency?
Yes.
I believe it's Conservation Commission.
Got it.
Yep.
The design process, is that from the PCD?
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're up to 3.21 yet, market study, but it seems like, isn't that kind of what some of our big discussions have been about? For example, do we really need 1,800 square feet homes, or 14, is that too small? And do we need 2-car garages, and do we need basements? Do we want to see some motivation for the kinds of houses that they want to put in that development, and where the market is for that? I mean, this was even part of our initial discussions with the folks at Athens Lane about, do we really want, age restricted or age targeted?
That goes to in drafting what we want in the bylaw. It might not be a bad idea for, like, Habitat is asking for us to amend things. Maybe it might be a good idea at this point to ask them for the market study to prove to us that they can't sell smaller units, or
Yeah,
there's a better market. I'm not sure. I think this is too late to require that.
That's
And I
kind of where I
also-
was at, which is, that's the kind of information that really got us to the point of approving the bylaw.
Right, right.
And we had some meetings about their marketing and
Mhm.
requested it specifically, but yeah, this fell into the camp of what would I do with that information now, and how would it express itself in a decision?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's kind of difficult to think. Obviously, they have to submit a fair market housing plan, which affirmative fair market housing plan, which is a little different than what this is
Right.
asking for. But.
I agree with you, Jesse. I would have kept this out. I also think that, just being realistic, a developer is gonna build the biggest residences units that they can to make the most money that they can. And I get that.
And they're
So
not
their
gonna build,
marketing is gonna reflect what they want to do, which is
Right.
what our experience was when they came forward with us. And it's like, we all felt like the marketing issues that they were presenting weren't totally, what our perception of what the market demand is right now. And so I think that asking them for the market feasibility study, we're only going to get things that they want, and skewing the facts or the statistics to what they think that how they can make the most money. And I get that that's where they're coming from, but that is definitely not where us in the town are coming from.
Okay, so everyone's good with taking it out?
Yeah.
All right. It looks like we are on, that's page 19. Anything else on that page? Otherwise, page 20 only has a few changes.
Yeah.
Where are we defining the primary and secondary conservation resources?
That is in the, right in here in the regs in one of the first couple pages.
Okay.
Yeah, right in the beginning.
I have a question, and I don't know, maybe it's somewhere in here. I know a lot of times when people are doing ANs, there's a talk about the impact on how many safety calls how many calls to, how many ambulance calls or how many, etc.
Right.
Do we capture that type of impact information anywhere?
We ask when we send the request for review to the other departments, on our public safety form, we specifically include those references as the type of information that would be helpful for the board to see.
I know,
So
Joe.
is that if, but
Yeah.
are we asking them to provide that information?
No, I don't know if it would be,
accurate?
I would rather have the,
Rely on public safety to see what their experience is at Ridgewood or Upperglen?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess there could be instances where they may have some experience, but my guess is that that's going to be something that comes from the municipal end. I don't know how much these development firms would like know that kind of, once they've kind of, washed their hands of something and moved on. I don't know how much they know of that, but I could be wrong.
They probably downplay it.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see what the numbers for Regency are now compared to what Joe predicted before it was built. I know he did a presentation about what they expected. Just would be interesting.
Yeah, we've had some conversations with him about that. I can't recall offhand, but the significant uptick for sure.
In traffic.
In call volumes.
Calls.
Oh, and call volumes. Right.
Emergency call volumes.
Yeah, even just like responses to smoke alarms, and even just like non-emergencies,
Right.
where they just have to send a crew out. Yeah.
Huh.
And his thing was like, hey, even if it's not an emergency, it's still a crew that's not at the station ready for an emergency when it does arrive. So his feeling is, even if it's still a lot of work. So yeah.
Okay.
I just had a question since we're talking about natural features and existing conditions.
Okay.
I guess what concerns me is that we are dealing with such huge, or relatively huge, parcels right now. And I have to say that I once got lost in the Marble Hill, and I went to the only way I could get out and find my way home quickly was to go to the top of Wedgwood. And it was right after we had the first complaints and we went over for the site visit with Wedgwood. And I stood on the top of that hill and looked at all the cleared area. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is the reason why we're having this issue. Now, I know that we did engineering calculations on water flow and all that, but I guess I feel kind of skeptical about those kind of calculations, that anybody thinking about the removal of all those trees on those hills, that wouldn't impact the water. It's hard for me to imagine that calculations supported that much of clear cutting. So what concerns me is that we already have these issues, and do we have a way of calculating the impact of like water and clear cutting, and like how reliable are these calculations? And I don't know. I feel like sometimes, I mean, I grew up in the mountains, and I would see what would happen when they would clear cut a side of a mountain. I mean, I don't have to have an engineering degree to realize that that's going to impact. So when are we gonna, are we gonna be really careful with these larger developments, that we really, really take a hard look at water and the impact of the clearing and what we're doing with infrastructure and moving ledge and stuff like that around? Do we, I mean, you get my drift of what I'm saying. I would like some kind of reassurance that you know, when we go into these 100 and some acres or whatever it is, that we are really covering our butts here.
So I think it's helpful that we're asking them to identify the conservation resources, primary and secondary. I hear what you're saying. They're gonna give us all kinds of calculations and everything. And I think the best we can do is have it peer reviewed and do the best we can in preserving the areas that we believe should be preserved.
But this also brings up the things we've experienced regarding the order, the sequence of events and for construction that, so for example, the things that we ran into on, wow, my mind is like gone. The people up the hill who built the house on the hill off of Walcott.
Spring Hill, Jillian's?
Yep. Yeah, Jillian's.
Jillian's?
Oh, Chiaroscuro or?
Oh,
I think,
Spring Hill, Jillian's.
yeah, well, so if we think about when we had those discussions, we also said we need to get with the developer up front about the sequence of events of the construction. Is there anything in either these rules and regs or the subdivision rules and regs that look to address that?
Good question.
Because I definitely want to make sure that all the pain points we've been through,
Yeah.
we are addressing.
Yeah, so I think specifically, that really comes into the phasing of the development itself. That was the big issue, if you recall, at Regency, which is they wanted to clear the whole thing all at once, and we didn't have a way to really stop that. So let me just make note of that, and I thought that was dealt with in the zoning bylaw, but I will make sure that it's addressed here as well. And my guess is one place to have that additional mitigation is probably under the erosion control and sedimentation plan requirement.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just going to make a note of that, and I'll go back through and just double check.
Okay. I'll be right back. You guys keep going.
I'm not sure what page you're on, but on page 21 in section 3.24.1.5, bullet 4 mentions the PCD.
Oh yeah, okay.
So that's probably a copy from someplace else that you want to fix.
Good, John. That was a good catch. You get the gold star for the vocabulary tonight with penultimate.
Yeah. Oh, you like that?
Yeah.
Oh,
I wrote
yes.
that down to look it up later.
Watch
It actually was the second time I heard that today.
I watch too much British TV.
All right, are we on page 21? Or where is everybody at?
21.
John caught the reference to PCD.
Oh,
Yeah, so all these pages, 21, 23, 24, 25, with the exception that I'm about to note, is all stuff that came out of the PCD rules and regs, which is our most modern version of rules and regs. And honestly, the AAN is essentially an HOA version of a PCD when you really look at it, taking out the housing issues.
Right.
The one part that is different though is on page 24, which is subsection 10 there. And this was, I believe this was language that, again, Sue and I discussed. So basically one of Sue's more modern concerns is these big time storm events that are dumping huge amounts and
Yeah.
how to prepare for them ahead of time. So that's what that's from.
Especially since they're happening more often, it seems.
Right.
Totally, yep.
Can we go back to page 22,
Sure.
number 7? So, you put in there, including signage delineating location show, because of the fact that we didn't, that's what we learned from Regency, right?
Yes, that's part of it, yep.
Okay, good. I like that that's in there.
Is there something in here, and we may not even be in the right section, but I don't know, somehow that's reading this section sparked my thought there, which is, it does seem like when we have development that is on land that has stuff on it, whatever that stuff may be, we tend to require them to remove it. Should we actually state something about that, or do we already? Just as because I always look at these rules and regs of, hey, that's a heads up to you that it's coming.
Yeah, I think I remembered seeing something.
Yeah, so let me just double check here. I could
Maybe it was up under prohibitions though.
That's a good point. I thought it was like under the, where there was a discussion of like conveyance of open land. Hold on just a second. Ownership and maintenance.
Because I guess I kind of look at it as we want them to do it regardless.
Whether or not it's open land.
Yeah, and no matter who they're conveying it to, right? We
Right.
don't.
Right. Where did I see that?
So basically what you're saying, and I think this would fall under section 310, which starts on page 16. I'm not seeing it here. It might be that exists better in the PCD regs, but
Yeah.
basically you're saying that prior to conveyance, the land should be cleaned up of any non-natural features or
Any junk, right?
right, okay.
And it's not that we don't cover that in our decisions normally, but I just feel like we might as well put it in here because this is what guides them to know what's coming.
Or to prevent doing it in the first place,
Yeah.
if they have to remove it.
Actually, a little hazy as to whether we require it in the PCD regs, which is kind of why I've been raising the topic regularly for Joanne Drive, and it was incorporated in the decision, because it may not be a guidance we have for ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm just uncertain whether that's in the regs or not.
Yeah, I'll do some digging. I'll figure that out.
But it'd be a good thing to have in the subdivision regs and the PCD regs and this, if they're not.
Yeah.
So you guys don't think that we should require them to clean that up until the very end at the conveyance? If there's a
No,
conveyance?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I just feel like that's more it's more of a safety point that if nothing else, it's in here and they know by then they have to do it.
Yeah, it's like the open land shall be free of all blah, blah, blah by the time the land is conveyed or something like that. It's basically gives you something to cite in the decision. Am I right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I mean, why I'm even asking is I'm just a little bit worried that that things don't get covered up. I think that it costs money to take things out of places. And I think that when you're having infrastructure, equipment in there, that it's pretty easy to just take
Bury
a
it.
few shovels full and bury stuff. So I'm trying to think of, if we call attention to it, how do we call attention to it at the initial outset of the project that it needs to be cleaned up? I mean, I'm asking about time frame and what you guys see it as. If it sits around, it very well could just kind of disappear sometime during the project.
And I don't know about you guys, but certainly I think I can't at various houses or eventually homeowners find things that developers buried, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And
mean,
I know for me, it's mostly been related to the actual development, but I would, who knows what people have buried.
Yeah.
I have 150-year-old pottery shards in my front yard, like pieces of glass and old pottery. Old pipes. Like smoking pipes, like glass smoking pipes.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Wow,
It's like an archaeological dig out there.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, yes, it is.
that's cool.
So are we talking about, we want it to be identified up front? I don't,
I kind of see it as saying like any refuse, junk, or other material identified in the open space area should be immediately removed. And then something else saying the open land shall be cleared and cleaned or cleaned up of all stuff prior to conveyance. There's like a two-part thing. Is that what I'm
Yeah.
hearing? Like
It
if you
is.
see something
I
on
think
there,
so.
you just wait around.
And if there's anything we can put in there about stuff created by the construction, I don't know.
So including all construction debris, old erosion controls, that kind of
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excess materials, whatever.
Yeah.
And pre-existing
So-
conditions that,
so are these conditions concerning just the open land or in general? Because you don't want a new homeowner to
right, I
Fine.
agree.
something
Yeah,
more
I
than
mean,
pipes buried in there.
I think the obvious junk yard pieces, clearly I doubt any homeowner would accept that, but
But no, I'm just thinking of, to Meg's point, that it could get buried on one of the lots.
yeah. I mean, if you guys, what is the place there off of it's not Boxborough, off of, wow, I'm losing my mind right now.
West
Getting
Acton.
late.
The road to Acton there, what is the conservation
West
land
Acton,
Oh,
on
South
the
Acton.
left-hand side?
South Acton, Captain Sergeant.
Back hill.
The one that has the cars in there, it's got like all kinds of stuff in there. There's a
Oh, Marble Hill off of Taylor Road. They got cars and, chassis there in the Marble Hill. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty ugly.
Funny thing is, I hear there were actually cars on my land prior to it being developed.
So
All right, I don't know. Have we made it clear, Jesse? Or do we need more discussion about that?
Yeah, I have some ideas. Let me work on this, and then when we can look at it again when we have a updated version.
Okay.
Trying to remember, where did I just put? Oh yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't think that it's unreasonable to say that prior to the start of construction, if there is pre-existing debris on the property, that we would like it to be cleaned up and removed prior to any excavating on the site. I don't know, something like that.
I may need to actually excavate to get to it, but
Like, there's plenty of stuff over at, now I'm like you, the street, Athens Lane. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of old stuff over there.
yeah.
So, yeah, and then who would make sure that it truly is removed before things start?
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing that concerns me over there too is that there was so much dumped in the sites near there that
Yeah,
I would be very surprised if there wasn't just wholesale dumping going
Yep.
on everywhere.
Yeah.
like that poor farm on, what is it, off of Sandy Brook, or, you know, that one, Walcott, the first one.
Hemingway.
That's, yeah, the one that still
Yeah.
isn't built.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Okay. Hopefully we beat that one to death. I think we were on,
Page 21, 22.
Dumb question, are we planning on finishing this tonight?
I don't,
I think based on what's coming in these regs still, we're at I think if we can just get ourselves to page like 25, that would be a good stopping point
Okay.
because.
Because
what's
then it gets
coming-
really deep.
Right, I
Yeah.
totally agree. That's what I was gonna suggest.
I
excellent.
don't have that much brain left.
All right, let's do anything else on page 22. And if not, we can move to 23. And I think 23 is where it stopped in terms of what you took out of the PCD, right?
Yeah, for the most part. Yep, I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So then on 24, that's the language you added based on Sue's comment.
Yeah.
And 25, these are borrowed from our other regs too.
Okay.
On page 25.
I have a general comment, kind of coming from the Regency condominium regulations. They put in their homeowners association and maybe deeds, I'm not sure about deeds, that you can't hang clothes outside of your building. And that just really annoys me. And I think we should prevent that from happening, both from energy use purposes and also for just using your property. And once it gets into a homeowner agreement like that, it's never going to come out. And I would like to regulate some of these homeowner condominium association kinds of things that can get created because people are panicked about their value of their property and won't let people use it fully.
So I remember that comment, Mark. If you look at page 29, I took a stab at including that.
Yep.
That jumps ahead a little bit,
Okay.
but yeah, so
Yeah.
we can certainly get to that.
Okay, so that's good to know that you've thought about that already. I love my clothesline.
You can't have them at Arbor Glen either.
Curtis is such a nut that we have a clothesline, and if we're gonna use the dryer, we can only use it if it's sunny out and we're making it.
Yeah, for the solar, yeah.
So that's his compromise of we're either gonna put it outside or we're gonna use the dryer when it's sunny. All right. So any other comments through page 25? And then one last question I'll put out there too is, are there other challenging points people remember from recent applications that spark any other thoughts as well? I feel like a couple of us have sort of brought up a few of them, but I might as well just ask the question outright. You know, are there any challenges you particularly remember from our recent decisions that we want to talk about? How those things are addressed?
I think everybody's about brain dead.
I
right?
know, I think you're totally right.
The whole Regency erosion thing was actually within our guidance and regs. So we didn't have, it wasn't an outside of regs problem. It was mostly just having them conform to the both decision on our regs. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate.
The only other thought that comes into my mind is there anything regarding the fire guidelines
Fire cistern and
about? I know, like, over the past few years, a couple times we've talked about the new fire.
Yeah, I've specifically not tackled that in the subdivision rules and regs, because I think where we left it was we wanted to look at the overall construction standards around roads. I just haven't gone there yet.
Okay.
I don't think we necessarily, if we didn't do that as part of this update, we're totally fine based on what we already have. It's more of a question about whether or not we want to tackle common driveways, and if so, we have to kind of look at
Right.
the picture. So that's how I was, at least.
All right. Future discussion on that then.
I can't wait.
All right. All right. So before we go, just, I guess, Jesse, remind us next week. Do we have any? What is on the agenda next week? Are there any appointments on the agenda next week? I guess is my question.
It's going to be Joanne Drive, Hallocks Point, and we can continue this discussion.
Okay.
And it's probably some other minor things around the way.
Okay, that's excellent. All right. And anyone else have anything they want to bring up before we look to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. I'm not going to take a roll call vote. I'm sure you're all.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody.
night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Have a good night, folks.
Bye.
I